The last time I picked up a Star Trek figure, it was this scale. I mean, pretty cool. Not nearly a 1/6. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ben Thomas Show. Thanks for coming back. Exo-6 came out with some, staggering releases. I've been waiting for Star Trek 1/6 scale figures since I got into the 1/6 scale game. Now, I know there were companies that have come before them that tried, and they gave amazing efforts, but not like this, not like the ones that I've seen. And the scale of releases that they're planning for the next couple of years, I think if they are successful with some of these initial releases, the potential is going to explode. So today on the Ben Thomas Show, we're going to take a look at a couple screen grabs from some of the releases. I want to talk about some of the hopefuls that I have, some of the characters that I hope they release slowly over time, some of my favorite villains, some of my favorite just characters in general. And if you're a Trekkie, just like me, then I hope that you're at the same level of loss for words. So let's get into a couple options that have come out already, and let's talk about those a little bit. So the Jean-Luc Picard from First Contact was one of the first figures that I saw Exo-6 release. Now, what a nice looking figure. At first I wasn't totally sure they'd captured the Patrick Stewart likeness, but after closer review, and after seeing some in-hand shots, damn does it look good. And some of the outfits, the tailoring, the Starfleet communicator badge, I mean, all of the details for me were on point. Even the coloration of the outfit, the material choices that they used for the uniform, I really like it. They've just recently announced, and we'll show some pictures here, of Jean-Luc Picard's captain's chair, with the backdrop that is essentially the Enterprise bridge behind him. Now that is a really funky diorama setup. I know a lot of people who just simply love to collect 1/6 scale chairs with their figures. They like having their figures sitting down. It's kind of their theme. And how cool is it that even though Jean-Luc Picard is the captain of the Enterprise, those chairs in those Enterprises and those ships end up becoming almost their own characters too, because they're such pinnacle parts of the show. I mean, how many episodes can you think of where they're on the bridge of the Enterprise and shit's going down and, you know, they're going to crash, or they're hanging on for dear life because they're after the Borg and the Borg are taking them out, and the chair is its own character. I think it's cool that Exo-6 has actually put some effort into making something so realistic. And I mean, you can see that by the pictures, it looks really nice material, really nice tailoring in the seat. I like the way it's painted. I think the buttons look really screen accurate. I mean, without taking a direct comparison, it's pretty good. Now, one of the other releases that came out, and I missed this release, was Data from, again, the movie First Contact. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the movie First Contact was, or is, I'd say, in my opinion, the best Star Trek film of the Next Generation cast. It's where the Borg decide that in order to beat Starfleet at their own game and take over, the Alpha Quadrant, that they're going to go back in time to a time where humans aren't able to defend themselves. It's just essentially they're a bit of a post-apocalyptic society. They're a little bit beyond that now, but they're just starting to get back on their feet, these groups of humans, and they're starting to look into essentially creating warp drive. And warp drive is what ends up ultimately getting the attention of the Vulcans, and that is kind of what kicks off the Star Trek universe. If humanity had never figured out a way to travel at the speed of warp, then they would have not got the attention of the Vulcans. The Vulcans would have never come down in the film. And again, everything that we know to this day about Star Trek may or may not have happened, at least not in the way that we've seen it. And so I've always liked a good time travel film. The Borg have always been my favorite villain. In this film, they talk a lot about humanity, and they talk a lot about what humanity was like in earlier centuries versus what they can be now in the future. I always like Jean-Luc Picard's line in the movie where he says to Lily when they're in the observation deck and she asks Picard, how much did this ship cost? Like, it's huge. Like, how much did this cost? And Picard turns to her and says, well, in our century, money is no longer the driving force, that we work to better ourselves. And that has always stuck with me. In fact, me just saying it right now gave me some chills. I like that concept with Star Trek. I like that everybody works together to try and better the galaxy. They fuck it up sometimes, right? I mean, they do. We've all seen, if you're a Trekkie, as I said, you've seen the episodes where they mess up the Prime Directive pretty hardcore. And again, for those of us who are not Star Trek fans, the Prime Directive is really just a set of rules to make sure that if we interfere with a pre-warp civilization, that we don't have a lasting imprint on them. That whatever our interaction with that species would be, it doesn't change the course of their history. Because in order to become warp capable, in order to grow as a civilization, it's not fair for Starfleet to essentially give them a helping hand. They need to allow those civilizations to become who they will become on their own terms. But sometimes that Prime Directive gets violated because sometimes that species is about to be wiped out, or there's a reason for why, the captain of the Enterprise or the Enterprise crew want to save a species, even if it means violating that Prime Directive, right? I mean, ask yourself, if you knew that on a starship we could go and save a whole civilization of people with our technology, but we had a set of rules that said we couldn't, would you do it? Or would you not do it? Right? I mean, it's an interesting debate because I would say that the heart side of myself would say, well, I'd want to save that species. I'd want to save that civilization. But that would violate those set of rules. And so I think it's really cool that in First Contact, the crew has this interaction with this pre-warp civilization, and they get the chance to kind of see where we've come, where we could go. There is a character on the Enterprise. His name is Data. And Data is an android. He has strived to better himself and to become essentially more human. That is his ultimate goal, is to be as human as possible. And in this movie, the Borg Queen gives him an opportunity to have skin grafts made of real skin that have a real sensation. You can feel cold, she can blow on his skin and the hairs on his skin will get goosebumps and the hairs will stand up. It's very enticing for an android who has lived his entire life as a synthetic being, who's always strove to be a human. So you all know it. The figure that I missed is Data. And in that box set with Exo-6, they even give you an additional head sculpt that has half the skin graft on Data's face. And not only do I see the Brent Spiner likeness there, but I mean, it's such a cool scene in the movie, and it just shows the humanity of Star Trek and the humanity within Data, who is a synthetic android being. What a cool second figure to release. So, I start checking out Exo-6, and I think, this is now on my radar. Well, then they announce that Q, and not just any Q, Judge Q, is coming. Now, Judge Q plays just as much of a part in Star Trek The Next Generation as some of the main characters, even though he's really a guest appearance. Q is an omnipotent being. He is able to click his fingers and be anywhere in the universe at any time. He loves to fuck with Picard, right? And Judge Q is the villain of the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, which is Encounters at Farpoint. Now, Encounter at Farpoint is a 2-part episode. Part of that episode deals with Picard being put on trial by Q. Q thinks essentially that if humans are allowed to continue on traveling and exploring the galaxy, that they'll essentially bring war and devastation, just like we have in our own history. So Captain Picard and some of the crew have to essentially go on trial to prove Q wrong, that they deserve to be out there, they deserve to be exploring the universe, which is a great first part. The second part deals with Commander Riker, who is the second officer, or he goes by number one most of the time, but he's the second officer on the Enterprise, and it's his debut. It's his first day. He's getting ready to come up to the Enterprise for his first shift, basically, and he's down on the planet waiting for the Enterprise to essentially pick him up. And during that portion of the second part of the episode, he encounters an alien species to which he finds is being used and manipulated and abused. And it's just a whole other thing. So either way, Judge Q, right from the very first episode, we get to see Q make appearances, who's John Delancey is the actor's name, by the way. Phenomenal actor. He's been in tons of things. Loved his guest appearance on Breaking Bad, even as the air traffic controller. I mean, like, kind of crazy. But again, awesome actor. And he's now made another appearance in the TV show Picard. Season 2 of Picard that's just been out airing. So again, exciting to see Q back, but Judge Q definitely played an impact in the Next Generation. At least for me, he was a standout character. So I already have Judge Q pre-ordered, and I will be enjoying the shit out of that figure once he arrives. Now let's get into some of the other figures that are being released, because I've seen quite a few, and I'm pretty excited about them. Again, these are some screen grabs that I found online. I appreciate anybody that's put them out there, because again, it gives us folks here in Canada a quick view into it. So let's take a little look-see. And one of those was Commander William T. Riker, played by Jonathan Frakes. Now, Jonathan Frakes is an awesome actor. I really got to know him mostly through Star Trek: The Next Generation, but there was some stuff that I watched as a kid, like the show Beyond Belief. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show, but it was a show that was basically made up of a bunch of small stories that seem really unrealistic. At the end of that episode, Jonathan Frakes would kind of walk out and say, "So, do you believe that this episode was fact or fiction? Or was it beyond belief?" And you'd get to kind of guess as an audience member what you thought. Great show. Totally recommend watching it if you get a chance. Again, Beyond Belief. But I got to really know him, as I said, as Commander Riker. And it's funny because the image that we get to see of this figure shows him more as the matured character that he becomes. In season 1, he's got no beard. He's got a crazy baby face, which when you go back to season 1, it's kind of funny to watch, actually, because he looks a little awkward. He looks really, really young. After season 2 started, he grew the beard, and he kind of kept that beard for the rest of the series, which I think was a great thing. It made him seem more mature and more fit for, the number 2 spot on the Enterprise next to somebody like Jean-Luc Picard. He was always called by Jean-Luc number 1, which was cool. So when I see Riker, I see number 1, and for me, it's a must-buy. If the figure comes out nearly as good as we're seeing with the prototype, I think I'll definitely have Commander Riker in my collection. One of the other options that they've released here is Geordi LaForge. Now, I was born with terrible eyesight, and so Geordi always played a special part in kind of my heart and my love for the series, because Geordi is a blind man who has to wear a visor in order to be able to see. That's what that silver thing is on his face. Again, for anybody who's not a Star Trek fan. I thought that was a really cool thing, because I always feared that I'd become blind one day. And I always worried that if I ever was blind, I'd be screwed, right? I mean, like, I'd have to learn how to function as a blind person. And there are so many folks in the world who are blind, who are fully functioning people. And so I have tremendous respect for them. But I loved the science fiction of being able to put on a visor and be able to see. I thought that was really cool. Even the movie First Contact that we talked about earlier, they gave him contacts that allowed him to be able to see without the clunkiness of the visor. But the visor it's the OG. It's like that's how the character always was just, portrayed for me. So I thought that was really cool. And I like that Exo-6 is giving us 2 different, tailoring options. One's more movie realistic, and one's a little bit more television realistic. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, the next figure that they showed plays a very special part in my heart. It is Captain Jean-Luc Picard after he was assimilated by the Borg. Now, for those of us who, again, are not Star Trek fans, the Borg are essentially synthetic and biological mixtures of other species that have been assimilated by this Borg collective. And when you're assimilated by the Borg, you become a drone, and you lose essentially all your sense of identity. And you become a drone. That you have a hive mind. You don't think for yourself any longer. And somebody like Jean-Luc Picard, who had such a powerful mind, again, like he outsmarted Q, so many good episodes that show his intellect, to see him become a Borg drone was devastating, because suddenly all the secrets that Jean-Luc Picard had, all of the codes to the Enterprise, everything belonged to the Borg. They knew everything. So Jean-Luc ends up becoming, in the episode, it's a 2-part episode that this happens to him in, he becomes a character called Locutus. And Locutus is essentially a bit of a hybrid Borg, where he is still a drone, but the Borg Queen wants to use Locutus to essentially assimilate humanity. And because Jean-Luc is a direct connection to humanity, and he knows so much about their secrets and defense codes and all of the things, he makes the perfect weapon. It's the last episode of Season 3 and the first episode of Season 4. Again, it's called The Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and 2. I 100% recommend it. Even if you're not a huge Star Trek fan, it's a great 2-part episode just to literally watch. Exo-6 is releasing a Locutus. And not just a Locutus, he's coming with Borg Alcoves to go in the back of your display. Borg Alcoves are just what help the Borg to regenerate. They're essentially power cells for a Borg, because they don't sleep. They're not like humans, so they need to be able to regenerate, and their alcoves essentially are standing beds, which is really cool. It looks like you can get up to 3 in the diorama. I think that's so neat. They light up. You can see the green behind them. I'm almost at a loss for words, guys, because I am so excited to get a Locutus in my collection. If I got no other Star Trek figure and Locutus was the one, he'd be the one. So some of the prototype images I've seen of him, I feel like are still a little bit on the rough side, still a little prototypey for sure. I do think that they can polish up the outfit a little bit and the head sculpt a little bit. He's supposed to look a little bit different than the normal Jean-Luc Picard, because when you become a Borg, or when you're assimilated, they even take your pigment away. They make you look like a Borg. And so he looks like himself, but a very pale and scary version of Jean-Luc Picard. You can tell that he's not really home upstairs, or not very much anyways. So I think that's a really, really cool thing that they've done there. I like that they're trying to be screen accurate with that character. Now, since we're on the topic of Borg, I want to quickly jump over to Star Trek Voyager. Star Trek Voyager was a really unique show because of their journey. It wasn't a fan favorite for everybody, but for the folks who did like it, they obviously got onto it. And in that show, there was a character called 7 of 9, who is played by Jeri Ryan. She's actually making an appearance right now in the new television show Picard. Season 1 and 2, I believe she's been in. Great actress, very beautiful, and really cool character. 7 of 9 was also a Borg drone at one point, who was rescued by the crew of Voyager, Catherine Janeway's crew. And she slowly regains her humanity over time. I loved 7 of 9 as a kid, probably because she was, again, beautiful, but also a really cool character, a really powerful woman, really smart because of her time with the Borg. She spent most of her life as a Borg. She was assimilated essentially as a kid, and grew up with the Borg. So that's all she knew. So seeing her regain her humanity was a wonderful character arc. And again, I think for those of us who are Star Trek Voyager fans, really awesome to have in your collection. And that does remind me that, there was already another release as well by Exo-6 that has already come out, and that's the EMH hologram Doctor. He's a great character in Voyager. He is literally kind of salt and pepper throughout the whole series. And he is also an amazing character arc. I mean, honestly, most of the characters in Star Trek Voyager had a really great character arc. Whether you or not you love the series as an entirety, because there was a lot of filler episodes in Voyager, but I think the character arcs for all of them as they try to get home from the Delta Quadrant back to the Alpha Quadrant was a really cool way of showing these characters grow. And I really liked that. So Tuvak is another character that they've previewed at this show this last weekend. And Tuvak is a Vulcan commander. Vulcan is just another species in Star Trek, of course. And, I mean, I think this looks exactly like the actor. Tim Russ, I mean, it looks exactly like him. So, of some of these options that they've kind of shown, I think there's been a couple of softer options. This is definitely not one of them. He's like, looks really, really, really good. Now, getting into Star Trek, the original series, because I know there's some huge fans of the original series. For me, definitely has a special place in my heart, but it's not my favorite. Star Trek The Next Generation would be my number one. I'd say then Star Trek Voyager, or Deep Space Nine would be kind of a close second. And then it would be the original series. And then some of the newer stuff that's come out has been okay. But I really liked that they've announced a couple of different Spock options. So they've already released the mirror image of Spock, which is a really cool alternate kind of universe look to Spock, where, I've always made fun of guys that have just a mustache when they don't normally rock a mustache, because I've always said it looks kind of like their, alternate universe evil version of themselves. That's kind of what the mirror image of Spock looks like. He looks kind of like an evil Spock, and that's kind of what he was, which is cool. So they've also come out with Sulu from the Mirror. They've come out with Captain Christopher Pike, which is really really unique. They've come out with Dr. Leonard Nimoy, or Bones as he went by. I think it's a little bit strange with Bones here that I think he looks a little bit kind of like Sulu. Like, he's not, obviously, but the sculpt on him is, I think, the worst of the ones that have been shown so far. McCoy is a very unique looking dude. Don't get me wrong. But this sculpt has almost a bit of an Asian flair to it, I feel like. It doesn't 100% look like McCoy. So that's unique. I think that they'll probably tune that one up a little bit. But that's okay. The Captain Kirk from the Menagerie, Spock from the Menagerie, Captain Christopher Pike from the Cage, Talosian Keeper from the Cage, and Spock from the Cage. From the original motion picture, we get to see James T. Kirk in some of those, original outfits, which is really, really cool, as well as Spock again. From the movie The Wrath of Khan, which is, in my opinion, it's hard to say. I'd say that The Wrath of Khan or The Search for Spock were my two favorite Kirk and Spock movies. But I also really loved The Undiscovered Country, because just the mystery behind that, and who killed the Klingons and everything. I thought that was really cool. I loved seeing in the jail, in the Klingon jail, on the Klingon jail world, essentially. Really, really cool. There's so much good stuff in those movies. So if you get a chance, if you've never seen them, I recommend it. Totally go back and take a look at those original movies with Kirk and Spock. But from The Wrath of Khan, we get to see Admiral James T. Kirk. We get to see Spock again. We get to see Dr. Leonard Nimoy, who in that film gets mind melded by Spock at the end, which is really, really cool as the ship is kind of going down right when Spock thinks he's going to die. And so that plays a whole nother part in the search for Spock, but we won't get into that too much. And then Khan Noonien Singh, which is one of the best villains of all time in terms of Star Trek. So very, very cool. In some of the new Kelvin timeline by J.J. Abrams, the movies by J.J. Abrams, Khan is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who now, of course, plays Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So really cool little tie in there, but again, wonderful character. Now, again, one of my favorite movies from the original series is The Search for Spock. And in The Search for Spock, the main villain in that film is a Klingon. Not this Klingon, specifically, but that Klingon is played by none other than Christopher Lloyd. Now, Christopher Lloyd is a cool character in this movie because he's played by this Klingon who is a badass, and he is looking for the Genesis Project. I mean, who doesn't love Christopher Lloyd, right? So, again, I think for me, in the Exo-6 line, with all of the releases that they're planning on, I think I'd probably stick mostly to the Next Generation line, at least some of the ones that they've shown. But if I was going to branch out, I would probably 100% get the Christopher Lloyd Klingon. I mean, how fucking cool would that be? You could literally just have a Christopher Lloyd display in your house if you've got, Dr. Emmett Brown and Krug and I'm sure they're going to come out with other Christopher Lloyd figures, but those are the only two that I can think of off the top of my head. Now, the other announcements that they've come out with, and this kind of wrapping up the announcements anyways, are some of the Star Trek Discovery figures. Now, I get it. Star Trek Discovery is not the most popular, especially among, the hardcore Trekkies, even like myself. I've had a bit of a hard time getting onto it, but I do think that there are some decent characters. I like Michael Burnham. I think she is a cool character. I think she is a really interesting character to watch. I do like watching her character arc and development. And yeah, I even like the actress. I think she does a really good job, and I think she's really underrated. We get a chance to see Commander Saoru, who is a very unique looking alien, as you can see here just in some of these promo shots or these images of these pre-released images. So I think he'll be an interesting character for anybody who really loves the Discovery show, because he's a cool character, and you know exactly who he is if you like that show, right? So we also get a chance to see a different iteration of Captain Christopher Pike, which is kind of unique. I did like this version, and this version of Pike is going to be heading up the Strange New Worlds series that's coming out, so I think that's going to be an interesting series. I'm willing to give it a chance. I know that some folks haven't been loving, again, the Star Trek seasons that have been coming out, the new shows that are out. It's Star Trek. I'm willing to give it a chance. And then, of course, Philippa Georgia, which she plays a good captain in Discovery, as well as an alternate universe badass. And so, again, really, really cool figure, really, really cool character. I think that all of these characters have great potential in a collection or a display to really capture the essence of a lot of these lines. The only other one that I can think of is some of the figures from Enterprise. Captain Jonathan Archer, which I loved Archer. He comes with his dog, which is really, really cute, because the dog was actually a really main character in the show Enterprise, and some of his crew members will be there as well. Some of the characters that I hope Exo-6 releases, keeping in mind that, I've seen the stream recently with the developer, and I think he has a lot of really big plans in mind. Sounds like he plans to complete a lot of the Star Trek lines, a lot of the, the bridge crews, and then just obscure characters from Star Trek. There are so many characters in Star Trek. I mean, it's actually kind of endless. In terms of my wallet, I'm a little bit nervous because there are a lot of figures that I'd want to have. I mean, most of the Next Generation figures I mentioned today, including some of the original series characters, I'd love. But you can't own them all, or at least I can't. And so I'll live vicariously through anybody here that's listening who can own all of them eventually. But some of my hopefuls that I see are Lieutenant Worf. He is a Klingon. He is a badass. He's such a pinnacle character in the Next Generation. I love Worf. So I really hope they come out with him. They have released a Ferengi, so I apologize, I forgot to mention that earlier. Quark, I believe, is his name. Cool character, and I love the sculpting on the ears for this figure. I think they've done a really good job there. I'd like to see more Romulans. I'd like to see some Cardassians. And that's not the Kardashians, that's Cardassians. And I'd like to see a little bit more of the Borg. Just in general, I'd like to have multiple Borg drones in my collection that look different. I don't want an army build with the same drone, because no drone is exactly the same, because they were all individuals at one point before they were assimilated. So I hope that they can come out with a couple of different Borg drones that make it so that you can kind of have a bit of an army build behind Locutus, for example. I think that would be really, really cool. A Borg Queen I would love to see as well. So again, crossing my fingers for that. Lieutenant Tasha Yar, I think she'd be a great character to have. I know before Worf's time, Tasha Yar was a huge one. Somebody I wouldn't care to have is Wesley Crusher. Never really liked Wesley Crusher, so we can leave him out. He gets the short end of the stick. Poor Will Wheaton. Even characters like Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, she's an iconic actress and a really iconic character in the show, and she's also made a return in Picard. So I think that would be really, really cool. But there are so many. I mean, honestly, you could give me all of the Next Generation crew and a ton of their villains, and I would want to capitalize on that. So I'm going to pass that question back off to you guys. Of all the lines that they're planning on releasing for Exo-6, who are you hoping they release? What are your number one Star Trek figure lines that you hope for? Are you an original series fan? Are you a Next Gen fan? Are you a Voyager fan? Are you an Enterprise fan? Are you a Picard fan? Are you a Discovery fan? There's so much Star Trek to pick from. So if you had to only choose a couple, who would you choose? Or if you could complete a line, which bridge crew, which universe crew would you want in your collection? I'm really excited, guys. I hope you are. I hope you like this video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you on the next figure discussion.